All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, everyone, the inevitable has happened. Trump may be off Twitter, he may be out of the White House, but one thing we all knew, despite wishes otherwise, is there is simply no way he will exit the stage of American politics, especially not when he has a lot of grudges to nurse and to avenge. And unfortunately, for all of us, especially for the National Republican Party, that is going to prompt, as I've said here many times now, a major splintering of the Republican Party writ large and of its national electoral prospects. The action begins down in Arizona in a normally nondescript race for the chair of the state Republican Party, where Kelly Ward was running for re-election. If you're not familiar, Kelly Ward is a diehard Trump supporter. She's a failed senatorial primary candidate. She just presided over the first loss for Republicans in the state of Arizona in decades. So naturally, she thinks she deserves another crack at the apple. And even more naturally, Trump has decided to jump into the race to support her. Ward narrowly won her bid for re-election to the party chair by playing a recent video of Trump himself urging the committee to vote for her. The video put her over the edge, and she won. The state Republican Party then went on to censor current Republican Arizona Governor Doug Ducey, former Senator Jeff Flake, and the wife of former Arizona Senator Cindy McCain. Now, Flake and McCain, I get, they literally campaigned for Biden. But Ducey? What was his crime? Ah, yes, it was not going along with Trump's Stop the Steal gambit. It was certifying Arizona's electoral results, and for that, he had to be punished by his own party apparatus and by Trump himself. Therein lies the problem. Trump's opening gambit in Arizona is part of a broader move to push what the Washington Post calls the MAGA party. Now, if you asked me like 6 months ago, I'd say great. Jeff Flake, Cindy McCain, Doug Ducey. You got two libertarians in the mix with the wife of a former neocon. Exactly the people who should be expelled from the Republican Party. But here's the problem. You and I both know Trump's MAGA party has nothing to do with policy or ideology. It's simply a referendum on your undying support of Trump as an individual. That's the barometer that he's always held for whether you're MAGA or not. How else would you explain how libertarian Jim Jordan gets the Medal of Freedom? Trump, according to the Washington Post's Josh Dawsey, is mulling primary bids against every single Republican who has voted to impeach him in the House or who did not sufficiently back his Stop the Steal campaign after the election. Trump, according to the Post, has $70 million in the bank, largely raised off Stop the Steal campaign appeals to his voters. He's going to commission polls and recruit primary candidates in these districts. He maintains as his ultimate leverage creating the MAGA party, which would almost certainly split the Republican vote and render future Republican successes on the state and national level completely impossible. The Post says Trump is floating this right now, in particular, as a warning to all Senate Republicans who have had impeachment vote ahead of them. And this is where I come in to say I think the damage is already done. Whether it's primary campaign or it's a third party, you need look no further than Georgia for a preview of the future. Trump centering the MAGA party, or really the Stop the Steal party, what he might as well call it, the Trump party around himself, has essentially guaranteed two things. He will keep his hold on the majority of the Republican base, who hold him in the highest regard a former Republican president has been held since Ronald Reagan. But it also guarantees the current suburban exodus of the Republican Party itself, which on the margins costs them seats in Georgia. If you look at the vote, split ticketing, on the national level, it also cost Trump his own re-election. A few months ago, I cheered this move on. Let the suburbanites go, I said, as long as the coalition is expanded to include more working-class voters, which in many respects is what Trump did still manage to do in the 2020 election. But now, with Stop the Steal, when with Capitol riots and more, to the extent that there was a mass Trumpian appeal, it's broken down on the margins to make it nearly impossible in a nationwide race. MAGA, as defined by loyalty to Trump and whether the election was stolen, is by definition not an ideology or force which can expand. It's got a rock-solid hold on about 35 to 45% of the U.S. population, and that's about it. Don't get me wrong, this will still be a powerful force, especially in deep red states like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Wyoming, Idaho, and elsewhere. It will always appeal culturally to a nascent, downwardly mobile part of America, which saw in Trump a fighter for them and will have their loyalty for many years to come. But that ain't going to win a national election. And increasingly reddish to bluish states are going to look a lot more like Arizona in the years to come. Arizona's GOP censored Doug Ducey for not going along with Stop the Steal. Well, he was already only elected with 53% of the vote in 2014. As we found out on election night in 2016, you remove enough suburban whites from your coalition and you lose. Kelly Ward may rule Arizona GOP, but the question right now is, will the Arizona GOP even rule Arizona again anytime soon? Their two blue senators say otherwise. Or take Georgia. Brian Kemp won by the hair of his teeth in 2018, and now Trump wants to primary him. Probably will succeed in doing so if he doesn't bow out of the race. But then what in the general election? The suburban whites of Atlanta, who already barely voted for Kemp, they may turn out for him, but now he's lost the Trump base, who view him as a complete traitor. So if he wins the primary and runs, he loses the Trump base. If he bows out, then whomever has the Trump stamp of approval isn't going to get the support of suburban whites. Again, the two blue senators from the state look a lot more like the future. And last, my own home state of Texas. A lot was made, including by me, of the remarkable Hispanic working class swing towards Trump in 2020. We'll see if it lasts. I suspect it had a lot to do with the unique identity of Trump himself and, of course, those $1,200 stimulus checks. If they hadn't turned out as they had, Texas would have been red, but still barely. Because of suburbanization effect in Houston and Dallas and Austin, it's creeping in. And sure enough, the Texas GOP isn't talking about stimulus checks or any of the other issues that got Hispanics to go for Trump. No. They're the ones who filed the election lawsuit, and they're the ones who are now tweeting stuff like this. A state party that orients itself around Trump and being on Gab is not going to win statewide for much longer. What I've laid out is the future. And the crazy thing is, it's the future regardless of what happens. You can vote to impeach Trump, and it's going to happen. You can not vote to impeach Trump, and it will also happen. Trump starts a third party, and it happens, and if he doesn't, it also happens. I'll end with this to cover myself when the GOP inevitably wins the House and Senate and presidency in like 4 years just to prove me wrong. Even if it happens, it has nothing to do with you. It will be because Joe Biden is a monumental failure that I always suspected he really was, and somehow was able to screw up so badly and unite the right so well that they win. But if they do win, it'll look just like the Trump presidency. Lots of bluster, no action. The elites will be just fine. You get ready for the next 5 years of American politics because I think it's going to suck. And that's my treatise on where we are right now, Crystal. But I just see it as just an irreconcilable problem for many of these senators. Many of them, okay, you can, they're not going to vote to impeach. I don't think Trump's going to impeach. 17 votes is just completely out of the question. Republican base is like totally behind him, but he's still going to set out for vengeance. It's going to destroy their national electoral prospects. How the hell are they supposed to win Arizona again? It's not going to happen with Kelly Ward at the top, especially with Trump pushing stop the steal, decertify, all that stuff. We have the proof in Georgia of what happens whenever that becomes the Republican message. Same thing with Georgia. What's going to happen in 2 years when Warnock is up there for re-election and Trump is out there trying to primary Brian Kemp and turns it all into a referendum on him? Found out how that works. Yeah. Same thing. Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, elsewhere. In Pennsylvania, I guarantee you Trump is going to push one of those senators who signed in order to decertify their election results. Good luck in Philly, Yeah. Good luck. Around the suburbs, same thing, Milwaukee, Detroit. I mean, I can go on in terms of what this effect is going to be. Same, down in Texas, I can see. I'm not saying it's going to go blue, but maybe, or, it
won't be long.
It could be, maybe, we'll see. 6 to 8 years. But again, it's all about trend lines and demographics. So 5 years ago, tell me Arizona's going to go blue. No one would say that. Same thing with Georgia.
Texas,
and you can already see the trend lines.
Texas is on roughly 4 to 8 years behind the same trajectory that Georgia's been on. Yeah. So if you continue in the same direction, now the bad assumption that Democrats always make is that people are just going to continue in this direction and the opposition party's not going to try to do anything to change things, which is a foolish mistake. So nothing is inevitable here. But your basic point is Trump is a dead end. Dead end. We already know he can't translate his own personal popularity to other people. I mean, even the fact that Kelly Ward barely squeaked by
it was half
in Arizona, it was basically 50-50, and he had to film a personal video for her to help get her over the top. I think is actually very, very telling. How foolish, though. Ducey is the only Republican who's won there statewide in recent years whatsoever, and now they're even pushing him out of the party.
He was gonna possibly run against Mark Kelly for Senate, and he could have won. He actually is the type of Republican who could have won.
Might have been able to win.
He's not my preference. The guy's a libertarian. I frankly can't stand most of what he stands for.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, on a basis of national electoral politics, this is insane. Yeah. Because nobody else. I can tell you, Kelly Ward ain't gonna win.
Well, and also on the point of Trump's personal popularity with the base not translating to other politicians. Look at Josh Hawley. Yeah. Missouri, very red state at this point. his approval ratings are trash there. Even Republicans are not in love with Josh Hawley in Missouri anymore. So, like, going along with Trump and being his sort of, like, slavish, slobbering follower, that doesn't work out for people either. So they're in this impossible trap where if you stick with Trump and you keep the base intact, it's not a recipe for winning. And breaking with Trump in the short term is also not a recipe for winning. Now, ultimately, I think the calculation that McConnell is making is that short-term pain of having the break with Trump and excising him, banning him from running from future office again, and trying to chart a new course is, in the long term, the best direction. I think he's probably right about that. But you've got too many people who are too afraid within the party to buck Trump and is against their own...
Well, they vote him out, too. Right, McConnell was dead.
And it's against... Well, McConnell, in Kentucky, they tried to censure him as well.
Yeah, right.
But that didn't go so well for the Trumpy Republicans in the state of Kentucky, because he has such a lock on that party in that state, which is another interesting data point. But essentially, you're correct. Whatever they decide to do here, they're really kind of screwed. The only thing that they can hope for is that the Democrats be as, like, lame and pathetic as, they fully may well be.
That's the only way they'll ever win. And even if they do win, it's like, okay, good luck. You didn't do anything. And it's not oriented around anything except stop the steal. So what does that mean? It doesn't translate to anything. Ask the Democrats whenever they're oriented around nothing but stopping Trump, and then they win national united control of government. Yeah. And now they're like, we don't know what to do.
What do we do now?
What's up?
Not an inspiring story all the way around.
All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.